welcome everybody to Agentforce is a BA's dream job. Um, I think on our agenda, what we have the first few minutes is technical difficulties is on the agenda. But I think maybe should we just kick it off? I mean, I feel like we've got a lot going on here today. Okay, so welcome, folks. More folks will trickle in. If you want to keep letting us know where you're coming from, where you're calling in from today. If you want to let us know, also, somebody asked me today, what is the makeup of your community group? So, do you have independent consultants? Do you have admins? Do you have BAs? If folks want to share that information, I would be very curious as well. What do you do in the Salesforce ecosystem or outside of the Salesforce ecosystem? What brings you here today? So Agentforce is a BA's dream job. Let me figure out if I can move my slides along. There we go. All right, housekeeping items. First, the meeting will be recorded, edited, and posted on YouTube. And when I say edited, we mean kind of in the front and the back. Like if unless something goes horribly wrong in the middle, that'll probably just stay as is. There's also a link right there to our YouTube channel, which is Badass SFBA. On that channel, besides the recordings of our events that we're hoping to hold monthly, there's also a couple of playlists on some of our favorite YouTube resources for Salesforce Business Analysis, as well as a playlist of your fearless leaders, me and Pay, on doing some of our own interviews and sessions on business analysis topics if you're interested in that. Next, chat, and we'll do our best to keep up. There is a chat. We are on a new platform today, so there's actually also a Q&A section. I did turn on Q&A. We will be doing an extensive Q&A. Ian was generous enough to offer that at the end of his session. So if folks have questions throughout his presentation or just questions on business analysis in general, I'm happy to dig into the Q&A towards the end of the session. I would say use emojis wisely in that there's no emojis here. So I need to clearly update the slide. If you would like to put emojis in the chat, I encourage that. Share your feelings in emoji form. Otherwise, don't spam, which basically means don't like flood the chat with nonsense. That'd be awesome if you didn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't have even made the suggestion. Okay, and raise your hand if you want to speak. So that'll be more towards the end of the session. We'll have like a half an hour unrecorded. If folks want to chit chat, celebrate, discuss news. It's a GA day for Agentforce. Maybe discuss that, discuss certifications, whatever it might be. Towards the end, if you want to raise your hand and chat, we're happy to unmute you. We're just going to keep everybody muted for the beginning part of this presentation. And Pay will monitor the chat too. So if there's any like housekeeping item questions, we can address those as well. Sorry, Pay, I just assigned a task to you. All right, cool. Thank you. All right, our agenda today, introductions. That seems reasonable. Then we're going to go into Agentforce is a BA's dream job with Ian Gotts, who is the CEO and founder of Elements.cloud. OMG there, because as people may have heard, if they followed my career at all, Ian is one of my favorite speakers and one of my BA heroes. I don't think I would be where I am as a BA or in my career without his support and guidance, as well as being an attendee at so many of his speaking sessions. Every time he speaks, I learn something, and I'm really excited to have him here today and share him with you. I don't know if that's the phrase, but we're going to roll with that today. Post event, we're going to have 30 minutes approximately of Q&A with Ian, and then at a certain point, we will cut off and have unrecorded chit chat, which I mentioned earlier, where we will feel free to unmute and we can just have a off the cuff discussion, because that's kind of what I tend to be known for. Okay, so intros. My name is Vanessa Grant, tag BABA for Badass BA. I'm currently an independent consultant today. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, but my career is kind of been a little weird this year. I'm 12 times Salesforce certified, depending on how things go on Saturday, maybe 13 next week. I've had 14 years experience in the Salesforce ecosystem, 24 in CRM. I'm a Scrum Master, and I'm also helped with the Salesforce BA cert, as well as the Sales Cloud cert. I've worked as a product owner, consultant, BA, obviously, and I'm also a co-host of the Salesforce Career Show. If folks are interested in career paths, but that's a more general Salesforce careers, not just specific to business analysis. And passing it over to my co-leader, Pei.
Hello, I've been in project delivery for a pretty long time. First part of my career was in Microsoft space, but we don't say that word here. And then I moved over to Salesforce. So mostly on the project delivery is where I'm most comfortable, even though, you know, I've done more techie stuff before. I was a data architect, solutions architect before, but now I'm more comfortable in project delivery. So I've written a book, Salesforce Discovery 101. My next book, Successful Salesforce Projects 101, coming out in a few weeks. So that's where I'm, you know, that's what I'm doing right now. I deliver training for consulting partners, and also I write books, and I do conferences, and I meet amazing people, and I co-host with the lovely Vanessa, which is amazing. So, you know, I'm all set. Yes, handing over back to you, Vanessa.
All right. And I'm looking at the chat. It looks like we have a bunch of folks. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and why you're here and where you're from. I would also encourage folks to throw in LinkedIn links as well. Let's make sure that we connect with each other, especially if you're sharing Salesforce BA content. Throw it in there. All right. So one minor administrative last minute thing. Sales got wind of this session and was like, "Can you please promote our hackathon?" And I was like, "Salesforce, I am all about kissing your butt, and so like let's do this." So Salesforce requested plug. The quote was, "Such a great opportunity for all Trailblazers to show off their new skills. Plus, there's an awesome cash prize. So if folks want to join the Agentforce hackathon in New York City, the QR code is there. It's on November 18th to 19th. And go play with Agentforce, build something cool, and maybe win some money." So speaking of Agentforce, I'm going to pass it on to Ian, who will introduce himself and start his session off.
Well, thank you for that. Also, thank you for the kind introduction. So let's see if go. There we go. Right. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I think I can be summarized by 3 numbers: 10, 20, 30. Written 10 books, most around business analysis and business change and so on. 20 years as a Salesforce customer and 30 years around the BA world, standing on my soapbox talking about the importance of business analysis. The session slides are, you can get them through that QR code. That QR code will also be at the end of the presentation as well. So there's a QR code there. If you want to click on that, it'll take you and you can download the deck as a PDF. So Agentforce is a big thing. I mean, clearly last year everyone talked about Data Cloud, and Data Cloud was very data-centric. It was a data-centric implementation, and inside Elements, we've implemented Data Cloud internally. We've built a methodology for how to do it. Agentforce really is the next stage on top of that. But I think the important thing is Agentforce is completely process-centric, not data-centric, which is why it's so important to the BA community, because actually it's almost like our time has come. If you look at you'll see slides like this or various versions of this slide. Agentforce is essentially a wrapper around the Customer 360 platform, and it's not just an agent, it's also all the other AI-centric type capabilities. But let's think about agents, which are probably the most sophisticated part of the AI capability, sitting on top of the platform we all know and love, Customer 360 platform. which can access data from other systems through data cloud. So this is now, as you can see, a pretty sophisticated architecture. So a couple of things about Salesforce. Number one, it's now moving to a world where implementations are more strategic, they're certainly more complex, and therefore they require BA skills, they require architecture skills, they require DevOps, admin skills, so they're developer skills. So now it's a team sport. And you'll often hear me say that being a solo admin is the hardest job in the world now, being a solo admin. But nevertheless, so we're now got more sophisticated implementations. So that means the implementation maturity, how well we can implement, is suddenly increasing. But if you think about Agentforce and Data Cloud, both of those products are consumption-based pricing, which means that Salesforce only gets paid when people use them. So therefore, there's a huge emphasis on actually getting implementations right. And therefore, success isn't just a marketing story about how well people think they're doing, but actually the numbers, the revenue you get will be driven off the back of successful projects. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the change from where we are to agents is as big as from on-premise to cloud. And it's not like Salesforce is on the bleeding edge of this and going, okay, we're the only people talking about agents. No, this is an industry-wide global phenomenon around technology. Now, I get that not everybody is up to speed on this, and that's fine, because the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. If you're in the world of agents, then everything you seem to see and read about is to do with agents. But most people aren't there yet, and it will take a while to roll out. But this is what we're seeing in terms of what AI can now do, is a major shift. And Mark Benioff has been in several interviews where he was lamenting the fact he didn't make a hard enough pivot to AI and agents about a year and a bit ago. And that's why the whole company, about 3 months ago, he said, everything is agents. I know last time was Data Cloud, but now this really is where they are all going. So this is the part of our future if you're going to be part of the Salesforce ecosystem. So this architecture diagram you can see on screen at the moment is quite pivotal. Data Cloud is drawing data from different systems. The Customer 360 platform is doing things with it. And then agents are doing things with that, which again is why there's so much interest in Agentforce. And thank you everyone for registering and attending, and also for those of you who are watching the recordings. So that's the first thing. So let's just think about why agents are different and why we've had chatbots. I said back on the left-hand side, fixed rules, repetitive tasks. You basically built a little flowcharty type decision tree about do this, do this, do this. Copilots were a little bit more sophisticated, where you could talk to them, but they still had a very limited subset of things that they could do. It was like access the knowledge base, tell me how to do things. The really, really big difference with agents is that they are able to reason. So the whole Atlas reasoning engine means that the agent can actually decide which actions to take. And it kind of plans. So it still has that natural language. You can ask questions of it and it works out what that question means, but it then works out what to go and do with those questions. Now, it's not magic. It can't do anything. It's going to do things that you've defined it's able to do, but no longer are you having to logically, programmatically go, these are the things you're allowed to do in this sequence. So it's able to take action. And I think the point there about it knows your business, it knows your business if you tell it. It's not just guessing what you do. You're going to have to give it some information so it can start to make some of these decisions. So we're entering a very brave new world in terms of the way this stuff works. At one point, I can't see the Q&A because the slides are up on screen. So if you, Vanessa, if there's a lot of burning questions and you want to stop me, shout out and I'll stop. And by the way, I'm not just going to drive my way through the whole of the Agentforce Salesforce deck. There are just a couple of slides which I thought were relevant because you're going to see these slides a lot, and I wanted to try and put them into context for you. So this is the last of the Salesforce slides. They talk about the 5 attributes of an agent. The role, what can it do? So you have to scope this agent about what it can do. Is it a customer service agent? Is it an employee support agent? Is it a service agent? What can it do? The second is, what data is it able to get hold of? So is it data? Is it via flow, via Apex class? So clearly it's data which Salesforce is able to see, hence the importance of Data Cloud if you want to get to data which is not inside the core platform. Actions are, what are the things, you've told it its role, but then how does it actually do the things that you've asked it to do? So, is it flow? Is it Apex? Is it, what are the things that it's going to go and use? And then guardrails, which is what shouldn't it do? Fine. If it's a support agent, presumably it shouldn't be giving discounts unless it's inside some sort of policies. So you have to be clear about what it shouldn't do. And then the last thing is where's it going to get kicked off from? Is it an internal website, a site? Is it an external website? Is it kicked off by a record trigger flow? So there are ways that this thing gets kicked off. This is a very marketing-centric slide because actually these little 5 buckets are not the way that actually an agent is structured. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about the structure of an agent and then what it means to us as BAs. But again, the whole agent-centric world means we need to think about things in a slightly different way, but it's not a million miles away from the way we all think, because we all think about process and we think about the way things operate. So let's think about, actually, if you go and look at the Agentforce metadata, and by the way, an agent is just metadata. You can go and find it, Gen AI Planner, you can go and find the an agent, a topic, an action, obviously an experience site. You can find those through the metadata API, which means that they will make their way into things like the Elements.cloud metadata dictionary. So we can manage them just like any other metadata. And I think that's the power of what Salesforce has done, is said, agents, yeah, they are metadata. Data Cloud, yes, that's metadata. So things that we're familiar with, like the whole of the drag and drop approach for metadata, is familiar. So, okay, so we've got agents, we've got topics. So an agent has multiple topics, but a topic could be in multiple agents. A topic can have multiple actions. An action can be in multiple topics, hence these little crow's feet. So this is obviously an entity relationship diagram. But let me make sense of that for you by thinking about a particular use case. Let's think about an agent being employee support. So an agent is actually quite high level. It could be employee support. It could be customer success, because you can have multiple topics underneath an agent. So here's employee support, and then one of the topics is called payroll. So you need to give it a bunch of instructions and guardrails about what it can and can't do around payroll. And then you need to give it a bunch of actions. So the sorts of actions are, it has to validate a user. It can get payroll information. It can provide end-of-year tax docs. And I'm sure there are lots of other things, other actions that maybe the payroll topic will have associated with it. Clearly, a guardrail is you can't change your own payroll, or you can't change your own pay rate. You can't see other people's pay rates. So there are some things which around some policies and some guardrails, but also there are some instructions about what it can do. And obviously, over time, you can start to extend those instructions so it can do more and more things. And those instructions are natural language. You type them as though they're just ordinary language. So that's just one topic underneath the agent called employee support. Another agent might be, another topic under employee support could be expenses. So what's the sort of thing we could do? Well, obviously, we have to validate a user again. Note that action's already been created because we need it for the previous topic. So that's a shared action, but we can query expense policies. Now, I'm querying my expense policies in the context of the level of person I am. So if I'm a manager, my expenses policies may be very different if I'm the junior admin versus one of the CX level people, in terms of like, what travel level, like what level of hotel, if I'm working from home versus not working from home, what can I claim in terms of internet and phone? So those policies may be very different based on the user, which is why we need to validate the user. And again, you can start to see some other actions that this might do. Now, third topic under employee support might be benefits. Again, validate the user, because based on the user type, where I live, America, my health benefit policies that I have to wade my way through, this would be a fantastic use case. Trying to wade my way through all the stuff around what I claim. Do I have dental? Do I have eye? Do I have medical benefits? How do I do that? How do I change my benefits? All of those sorts of things could be part of this topic with those actions. Again, natural language, I can start to ask the questions. This particular topic would have access to, say, all of my health provider policies. All those huge documents could be provided as knowledge. And that's what AI is really good at. It's really good at reading through reams of documentation and starting to give you some answers. And again, back to the quality of the instructions that you write and the prompts that you write to access that content will determine the accuracy of the sorts of results you're getting back. Let me pause there for a moment before I rush into the next thing. Any questions or thoughts or things I need to worry about?
No, nothing yet.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got metadata, agents, topics, and actions. Okay. One more employee support idea, onboarding buddy, I know how to get tech support, acronyms are out Salesforce. You get the idea. So the thing about this one is very much, notice there's no validate user until you get to the third level, the third thing down. We're seeing topics being either query-based topics potentially or action-based topics. A query-based one is help me get tech support, help me with acronyms, versus an action-based type topic, which might be provide me with my end-of-year tax docs. So again, this is all very new, and we're spending a lot of time thinking about what some of those architecture design patterns are in terms of what's a topic, what's an agent, what's an action. Because again, if you get these right, this will scale really well. If you get this wrong, it will be another tech debt nightmare that we're wading through forever. So again, agent high level, topic, think about it as quite narrowly scoped. Actions are clearly driven off the back of, what do I want to do? Is it a flow, prompt, so on? Again, and think about them in terms of reuse and sharing. So if we just think about it a bit, take it to the next stage, let's think about the business logic. So first of all, I think a UPN diagram, a process map UPN diagram is one-to-one with a topic. So you may have a number of diagrams that roll up to a bigger diagram, which is the agent, but the sort of core building block is the process diagram about how a topic gets delivered. That topic has instructions, that has actions. Each action is connected to a flow, an apex, a prompt template. And obviously that flow then accesses data in Data Cloud. Obviously the DMO sits inside the core platform, standard objects, custom objects, and so on. So that's now the business logic of how do I get stuff done is in a flow, in an apex, in a prompt. Now remember, we're not expecting this agent just know the business and magically make up topics and understand how to do things. Think of an agent, or let's think of a topic, as I have outsourced the job that somebody is doing. Part of that job, I'm outsourcing that to a third-party person. That third party happens to be an agent, but it's a well-defined and understood process that we already do in the business, hence the importance of business analysis. And we're deciding that we want to go and then outsource it to an agent. And at the same time as we outsource it to the agent, we want to make sure that it's the best possible experience. So this is our chance as business analysts to start to optimize and really improve that. So this is not your average agent. This is the best agent the company has ever had. Obviously accessing all the current information, but we should be taking what operates and then optimizing it, making it the best result ever, and then implement that as an agent. So we are just taking understood processes and turning them into a series of instructions and a series of actions. And note the many-to-many relationships here. There are a stack of dependencies. That flow may be used in many actions, that action may be used in many topics. So there are implications in terms of how we architect this. So we have one flow that's used in multiple actions. I need to make sure I understand before I change that flow, the implication, not just what it's doing inside Salesforce, but what it's doing potentially to an agent. So again, documentation is going to be really important. And I've heard documentation mentioned several times in Salesforce keynotes. It's the first time ever. Suddenly, documentation is really important. interesting fun point, if you go and do the Trailhead badge, the Trailhead build an agent, you'll notice that all the things you use inside Agentforce to go and connect, they all have descriptions completed. First time ever. So suddenly documentation descriptions is really important. Quick side note. So if we think about the Agentforce implementation approach, as you might have discovered, the blue bit's business analysis, defining the use cases, feasibility of use case, the high level analysis, okay, how are we going to structure this agent into topics, then the design, which is how do we take those topics and turn them into actions, turn those actions into links to metadata, which then can be built. And then obviously we need the ongoing monitoring of these agents to decide how we change them. This is no different from you've hired a new intern to work in your call center. You need to track how they're doing, bit of coaching, listen to what they're doing, see how we can improve, make sure they're following policy. All those sorts of things need to be done. So the monitoring is quite important, particularly as there's less of a human in the loop now. Okay, so if you think about the Trailhead badge, that's it, a little bit of build. So all of the business analysis work has been done before you start doing that Trailhead badge called Build an Agent. So what we've done is we've tried to reverse engineer all the BA documentation that would have been done so that you could do your Trailhead badge, which is what I want to try and show you. I'll pause there for a moment. Any other questions?
We do have one question. It was about the use cases, about the topics. Hold on a sec. Let me see if I can figure out this bevy thing. I thought it would be a little bit challenging for me to translate this, so I'm going to bring somebody up if that's okay. If you want to pause for a couple questions before you move on.
Yeah.
Okay. ST, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure thing. I was just curious about the use case for many-to-many relationship between topics and actions.
Topics and actions, absolutely. Okay, so, well, let's go back a few slides. There we go. There is a topic called Onboarding Buddy, and an action is called Validate User. Oops. And Benefits also uses Validate User, and so does Expenses use Validate User.
Would it be fair to then say if once the action is, and of course this is future state, so I don't know what it would look like, but once the action is described or solutioned or designed, it can be used for different topics? Is that
correct? Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. That's the intention. Actions are reusable, and interesting topics are reusable. I'm not sure how that the metadata allows that, but I'm not sure how realistic that is to start with. But certainly, actions are absolutely should be reusable, which means you need to think about building actions in. Basically, an action is a wrapper around. Next that slide there. An action is a wrapper around a flow, an Apex, a prompt, or a external service. So it's telling the topic knows about an action. The action has a bit more description about it, but it's a one-to-one relationship. An action is connected to a flow, or an action is an Apex. So it knows how to it knows how to use that flow based on whatever's been pumped into it through the agent.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Right, so let's think about that Trailhead badge. So I drew up, you can see I've got the correct handwriting to be a doctor rather than anything else, but I actually created this. Here's a piece of paper. I created this Trailhead badge process, which I tried to try and guess what it was doing. So I created that. So let's go into Elements. So I'm actually inside our application, which will happily draw process diagrams off sketches. So let's see if it can do that. So the first thing as a BA you want to go and do is presumably if you haven't already got a process map, you're going to need a process map, because the first phase is let's understand what you do, work out how I can then make which bits of it I can make work for an agent. So that's why it said it's very process centric. You'll take the process, you'll get it documented. You can get AI to do it. We could do it manually. You may already have it. If it's a bunch of Visio diagrams, you could import it or use AI to go and turn it into a nice looking diagram. then the next stage for us as BAs is to take a look at it and go, that's okay, but how would I make it perfect? So there you go. There's AI creating the process map for us. Wow, look at that. So it knows about the feedback loop, and it's put website and AI agent. There we go. Right. So I've got a process diagram, and now I could start to take a copy of this and say, okay, how do I now, which bits genuinely could be an AI agent? The beauty of AI is it does a lot of work for you. Not always 100% correct, but now you've got something to have a discussion with the support agents, if it's a support one, or if it's employee benefits, the people who know how it works, and going, okay, which bits could we outsource to an agent? And then how do we make that the best experience ever? So I think this is the starting point. You've got to start from a process. This is not magic where the agent just knows your business and builds it. That's not how it works. It requires you to go and build a topic and a set of instructions, and those instructions are going to be driven off the activities in here and also any policy documents of the things you don't want it to do. So that's the process diagram. We also need we ought to be thinking about an ERD. What data is this topic going to need access to? So in this case, for the Trailhead badge, there was a contact, there was an experience, which is like going to the resorts, going to the caves, I think it was, an experience session, and then a booking for a contact for that session. The ERD, very simple, again. But again, someone had to have thought about this to be able to go and build all the things that you need for the Trailhead badge. Now we started to look at, okay, how do things all connect together? And this is deliberately, I haven't made it deliberately difficult, but this is actually what's going on behind the scenes for a very simple thing that takes you 20 minutes to build. As we're looking at this, the things in blue are the things that you do in the Trailhead badge. You create, okay? So you start with a requirement. You have a site which is already built and an agent that's already built. You create an experience management topic associated with the agent. So this diagram has only got one topic in at the moment. That topic, you go and create a number of actions. And for each of those actions, you connect them to a series of flows, Apex, prompt templates that are already built. So this is what the Trailhead badge does. It gets you to do that, create these, and in each case, it gives you the instructions on what you're meant to do. And all of these things already exist. And these custom objects, experience session, booking already exists. Contact obviously is a standard object. There's some Apex, which pulls some data from Data Cloud. And presumably, if you had some knowledge, that comes through the Salesforce platform to Data Cloud. Let me just, okay. Now, do you have to build one of these? No. If you build it and then this is all metadata, it will appear in the metadata dictionary if the metadata dictionary can build this as a dependency tree. The reason this is important, of course, is that if I change that flow, that one there, I know that it's going to change that action in that topic for that agent. But if I look at that flow, I will also be able to see where else it's used. So I know the implication of all of this is before I start making changes to any of these flows, prompt templates, Apex, I need to know the dependencies. Otherwise, I have no idea the implication of what's happening. Okay, this may sound scary. It's not. But do you remember at the very beginning, I talked about a level of implementation maturity? This is not someone going, oh, I'll click here. I wonder what happens, because you may not even know. All that's happened is your agent over there is giving discounts because somehow you changed the flow and you didn't understand the implication. This is why documentation is going to be really important. That the documentation about how an action works will determine how the agent uses it to deliver that topic. All of this is good, solid BA stuff. Writing instructions, thinking about actions, that's all the BA activity. The activity of building this thing, as we've discovered, is relatively quick because you basically connect these things. Obviously, you've got to build all those flows, but the thinking is the really important bit. So this is this is a metadata dictionary, happens to be Elements, but again, there'll be a new section under the top here, which is called agents, and underneath agents will be agents and topics and actions, then actions will be to flows. So therefore, the whole dependency tree picture, that kind of picture will be built for you so you can start to understand the implications of making changes. We just need to make sure we don't sleepwalk into this new complicated or more complex world. Let me pause again for questions because there was quite a lot there.
We did have one question from Christian. It says, but it was a follow-up from the last question. If you want to address that now.
Yep, happy to. Yeah.
Said to follow up on the question, how? Hold on. You know what? This is just easier if I just bring people up.
Oh, I can see it. I can see it. How can we build this kind of diagram with a free UPN account? Yeah, you can. If you go to Elements.cloud, has got a playground, which is a fully functioning application. Everything works. You can start playing around, building this stuff using that playground. So let me just go back to my diagrams. That is a process map. That's a UPN process diagram. That is an architecture diagram. Two different sorts of diagrams. This is the Salesforce architecture diagram standard. That's a diagram standard. That's an ERD. That is a UPN process map, and that's the two different sorts of diagramming. And these are core skills that you need to know. You need to be able to do process maps. You need to know how an ERD works. You need to start to think about things the way your architects will, so you can have a conversation with them. Because essentially, that's a design document. You're making some decisions about how an agent gets split into topics, how a topic has actions, how those actions get delivered. And this is the new world. That's not true. This is how you should have built Salesforce all along, but Salesforce let you get away with not doing this stuff. Obviously, it's coming back to bite us when you look at the levels of technical debt we're seeing. 50% of all custom objects never get used. That's the data we've got. We analyze about 1.4 billion metadata items a month now. 50% of objects never get used. So the idea of, I'll just click and see what happens, we've got to get beyond that and get into a more planned, which is how are we going to make this work? How are we going to actually build the metadata to support it? Let's make sure we've got the right objects, the right data coming in. Interesting side point, if you implement Data Cloud, if you do not do the planning correctly and work out what you want to do before you get started, it will not work. It's not it won't work very well. It will not work. You have to unpick it and start again. Someone said it's like you've discovered the patterns wrong in the middle of the sweater. You've got to unpick all the way back in the sweater, back and unknit all the way back to where the pattern was wrong. Data Cloud's like that. Agentforce, not so much, but you've still got to think about this properly. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into a ton of trouble. We are writing some on Saturday. We wrote some architecture design pattern documentation about how do you go about building this thing? How do you think about documenting it? So a lot of what you're seeing here is our experience of building agents coming out in terms of the planning. I don't think you need to build this document I've shown you, but I had to draw it to be able to show the complexity about what's happening behind the scenes.
I did bring Christian up to ask his question. Christian, are you available?
Yes, I am. Hey, Vanessa, thanks for this. Ian, thanks for this as well. So I actually gave it a really good crack to the Trailblazer, and yes, your explanation is pretty sound. But then I had my agent. I had one topic, and I said, okay, what happens if I bring another topic to the same agent, right? And I just went and added one of those templates that Salesforce provides, which is the case management template.
Yep.
And it was seamless, right? Like you pull it in and then the agent starts responding for cases. But and this is the follow-up question actually, one of the things that the agent was doing was validating the details from the customer, right? What's your email? What's your membership,
Yep.
right? And that was done, I guess, at the beginning when he was doing the booking. But when he hit the case, start asking that question again, which to me was like, why? So how do I manage to pass on that validation so that he doesn't have to revalidate for the case topic? Because it kind of feel like, oh, but we were talking about this, and now I want to raise the complaint, or I want to appraise, or I want to do something else, but now you keep asking me what is my but this is just the way that the trailhead was built. But
Yeah,
I
I think
would assume that this is going to happen in real life. You're going to validate in multiple places, as you
no,
mentioned
that should.
earlier.
I think the model should be the reason that you would group multiple topics under an agent is so that the agent doesn't keep on going, oh, I now need to pass you to Pete. And Pete goes, oh, hello, who are you? And I just told Jane. And then you go, right, oh, I'm sorry, I need to pass you to Vanessa. Vanessa goes, oh, wow.
Exactly
You're
right.
a valued customer. Who are you? Yeah, but I've just told her the whole idea of grouping topics under one agent. And I think what you've described shouldn't be the behavior. It might be the way the instructions were written because you pulled in different topics. And I think what you've described is what we're all going to have to go through is we're going to have to essentially debug this by doing the testing, and going, are the instructions in conflict? Because then is it breaking a policy? Was there an instruction that said, if you want to go and do case management, I need a different validation? So we're going to have to try and design our way around this, but also it's iterative build, where you go, we'll build it, let's test that. Okay, what's not quite working? It wasn't how we expected. Because we're using natural language for these instructions. So I think it's going to take a while before we really get to grips with this. The experience or the behavior you're talking about shouldn't, in terms of the way it should work, that shouldn't be the behavior you get.
Cool, thanks.
So I got a couple of other questions whilst we're still here.
Yeah, and Ian, if you wouldn't mind going to one of your slides right now, we're getting the infinite camera. And just one quick thing that I want to note for folks that are interested. The folks that are interested in universal process notation, there is a trailhead that I think, Ian, you had a hand in.
The last slide has got a bunch of resources on it.
Perfect. So wanted to mention that, and also for other diagramming, I would certainly recommend that folks check out the diagramming section of the well-architected site is another great resource for diagramming.
That's also on the resource, the link.
Excellent. Sorry, I didn't mean spoilers then.
No, not at all, not at all. But again, if people are going now of Googling it, there's some links at the end with all of the things that people want to go and talk to. Just looking at another question. How do you manage multiple topics if the level of complexity of a single one needs such navigation? You're going to need a metadata dictionary. You're going to end up having, so a lot of this stuff needs to get built for you. You can't be doing this in spreadsheets and Google Docs, okay? We've got to get beyond that, which is why a metadata dictionary which pulls all the topics from Salesforce into a way you can organize it, where you can see topics have actions have already got links. We've got to use a bunch of ways of we need to be able to use the technology and AI to do this for us. I mean, managing these topics is not that complicated. It looks horrible, but it's not that complicated. It's no worse than, say, some of the things we're doing with creating a flow which accesses multiple objects and does various things. It's just back to implementation maturity. How do you create an agent? We've done that one. Resources to learn how to draw an ERD. The resources on Trailhead are about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. I mean, they basically go. You need to go to some decent. We've got actually on the Elements Academy. We've got quite a good data modeling session. If you go there, academy.elements.cloud, we built a decent data modeling one there. But again, the data modeling, this is not Salesforce specific. You can go and find any good data modeling course out on the web. But again, it's a core skill. If you don't understand how to do the model data, then it's pretty hard. And if you don't understand ERDs and how data works, then you're certainly not going to get invited onto any data cloud project. That's clear. Let me go back and do a couple more things, and right. Let's do that. Right. Okay, so the things I've talked about are process data models, this idea of some sort of architecture design. You have to architect and design the exceptional process, the best process ever, before we start implementing it. An agent shouldn't be your mess for less. It shouldn't be, I know we do an awful job for $16 an hour, we'll do an awful job for $2 an hour. One of the things about agents is they will be competitive advantage. A really, really well-run set of agents inside a company employees will love working there, and they will be happy to work there. Really good agents on customer-facing sites will be a differentiator. I'm not going to fly with an airline, or I'm not going to have insurance where I sit for 45 minutes waiting for someone who's not very good, versus an insurance company that's got a really, really good site with a really good agent. An agent is the opportunity to hire the A-player agent at scale, implemented properly. It's also a way of hiring a bunch of C-level players at scale. They are your brand ambassador. There's quite a lot implied in terms of building these things and making them customer-facing day one. There's nothing worse than you go to the agent, it asks you for all this information, and it goes, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. You need to wait for a human. If it does that every single time, I might as well just wait for the human. So we need to be quite intentional about the way we build these things. And again, that's a business analysis skill. Talk to me about the outcome we want. Think about the process. Think about what the handoffs look like. How are you going to hand this off back to a human? And when it goes back to a human, how do you make sure they don't start again with a hello, who are you? We need to make sure that seamless transition, and maybe you pass it back to the agent later. So again, we've got a chance to redesign some of our customer-facing or employee-facing processes here. And then the last point is, you're not going to be able to do this with spreadsheets and a few Google Docs. It's really, if you're going to implement Data Cloud because you've got external data, you cannot do that without some decent support. It doesn't have to be Elements, but it has to be somebody. Just because it's just too complex. But also, why are we doing this in spreadsheets and Google Docs and Slack channels when there's a perfectly good metadata API which builds you a beautiful dictionary which is constantly up to date? Okay, this is just a level of implementation maturity. Right, final couple of slides. The companies that are going to do best out of Agentforce out of the gate, the people who are going to accelerate away from everybody else. And by the way, I think we saw this in COVID. COVID, suddenly everybody went to, we're all working from home, we have to do home deliveries or collect. We couldn't go to restaurants, we had to collect. The organizations which were the most mature, they got those, they transformed and drove a whole new way of working. Walmart was a classic example. They moved from in-shop shopping to delivery shopping really quickly, and you saw the increase in revenue they got from that. The same is true around agents. But so those guys, the organizations who've got well-documented processes, BA again, strong data governance, which again actually is a process issue. Do we understand how data flows from, object 1 to object 2 to object 3 and into our flow and out the other end? Do we understand what that is, and how do we lock that down? There's no point going, oh, we've got good data here, and then we've got interns pumping in spreadsheets at that end because, well, they've just arrived and they came back from an event, so they just uploaded a bunch of data from a spreadsheet. So again, understanding the business process actually helps you put good data governance in place. And then we need to get good at documenting metadata, because suddenly this stuff is going to be really important, because the agent is also reading that metadata to understand how to use those actions, how to within a topic. So again, it's a skill. It's not something that's an afterthought. It actually needs to be planned into how we work. So there's a bunch of resources there. There's a new Trailblazer group. Obviously, there's the Trailhead quest. Can I ask you to do one thing when you do the quest, though? Please don't go through as fast as you can so you get the badge and you say on LinkedIn, I built an agent. Because you didn't. That's rather like saying, I've assembled the legs on an IKEA desk and I build furniture. Because you don't. Can I ask you, when you go through that, to pause and go, why am I doing this and what's happening? Rather than just following through, click, 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 click. Each step, take longer than the 20 minutes and go, okay, what's actually happening here? Go back and have a look in the org and go, okay, what's that flow do? Oh, okay, I get it. And understand what's happening rather than just following through, copying and pasting the things in, because I think you'll get a lot more out of it. Interestingly, that 20-minute quest, is the equivalent. They do a workshop, which I think takes 8 hours to go through it in detail, just to give you a sense of what's happening behind what's going on. Obviously, we've spent longer than that because we had to build out those diagrams and reverse engineer it. But again, look at it through the eyes of a BA going, oh, why? Why did we do that? Why have you set it up that way? And you'll get a lot more out of it. We talked about UPN, talked about Salesforce diagrams. We wrote a blog about why metadata documentation is important. So again, if you want that deck, there's the QR code.
Awesome. I already missed the aspect of Zoom where we could all be like emoji claps, but I'll get off my emoji soapbox. Thank you so much, Ian. This has been amazing. I know. Yeah, I actually, it's great because I think you actually covered some of the things that I was thinking about. Was like, all right, how do we know that we're ready for Agentforce? Well, we've got to have everything documented. And thank you for the folks that are clapping with their emojis in the chat. I appreciate your support. Thank you. I will be putting in my ID exchange for the Bevy backlog. I was listening to you and actually was for me, being a BA on something like this, I'd be worried that maybe I wouldn't ask enough questions for all the guardrails that would be needed. Where especially if it's going to take actions and it's going to potentially, reveal information that I don't want to be revealed publicly. But my first thought was, wow, this is going to need a lot of testing before it goes live. But then also, how would I know how to make sure that everything is covered so that we don't have some catastrophic accident? A bot said something it shouldn't. I mean, at least, I don't know. I guess like in the beginning, you can, if you hire a person in customer support, usually they're going to be shadowed for a while. I don't know if it's that we're shadowing agents and then jumping in, or what does that look like?
So someone just asked me for the link to the that QR code, so I need to go and find that. I'll put the QR code back up. We'll post the QR code in a moment in the chat. I think the first thing is this is not quite the Wild West, but it's very early days. I think we should be doing this as employee rather than customer facing. So employees they get that this is all, we're still playing with it. They also, it has less implication because we're not dealing with customer. So you get quicker feedback because they are going to give feedback. I mean, customers' feedback is they just leave and they go to another company. They use another company, at least with employees. So I think Salesforce hasn't talked about this enough yet, but I think employee-facing agents are the ones to go first. So we start to learn how this stuff works. Would be my point. The thing about testing, because it's there's a great point from Mia saying, because it's not deterministic, you're going to have to think about what's the testing around policies. So you're testing the edge cases of policies. You're not testing, does A do B, does C? You need to be testing around, okay, the policy says that people shouldn't get more than a 10% discount in these situations. That's what the test cases are written around. So how do you then build it? So let me just share a slide for a moment. Share a screen. There we go. I think we're going to build a bunch of agents to support building agents. So you've already seen the mapping agent, but I think we can do a lot more with that. You saw it drawing diagrams off the back of a sketch, but we've started giving it all the metadata and going, what do you make of this? And it's like, okay, well, because of those list views and because of those validation rules and because of that flow, I think I can interpret the process from that. Okay. So reverse engineering your org into a process. Will it be perfect? No, but it's a good start. The planning agent, could I take, and we started, again, some of these we've already got it working. Some of them we're clearly in prototype. Can we take that UPN diagram and get it to generate the actions and the instructions? If you gave it that and you gave it the policies, rather than you manually writing all the instructions, why don't you get AI to write them? Because it's going to do a better job, potentially, the same way as it does a great job of writing user stories. The idea of a coach. The coach is the one that goes, I'm going to look at all of the instructions and the actions in this topic, and I'm going to pick out duplications and conflicts and gaps based on policies. So using a different mindset agent, but it's coaching the initial agent. Build agents, well, it's only XML. If you're happy with it, get it to do the first cut. And then the bit we're about to talk about, which is test agents. If it knows the mapping and the planning, could it start to build more broader testing in a way that's not the way we would normally do with procedural type testing? And then the last two are really interesting because I don't think anyone's really thought about it. The first one is monitoring. How are we going to make sure this thing doesn't go rogue? How do we, at the moment, there's no real monitoring about this topic's not working, or actually it's burnt through all our credits, so we need to switch it off. So how do we throttle the agent if it's doing the wrong things, or if we're going through the credits too quickly? There's quite a lot associated with that. And then I think there's an interesting one. You've heard of process mining, but I think we'll be mining agent data. Tell me the way that most end users are asking the questions of this agent, and then how do we optimize the instructions to give better answers more quickly? All right, so there's my, that's basically the things that we are looking at and playing with at the moment.
Awesome. We have a few folks that want to come up and ask their questions. If
Yeah, of course,
you're
yeah.
cool, I'm gonna bring up Ellie. Hey, Ellie.
I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay. You just wanted to come and chat.
Okay,
Say hi to Ian.
fine. I can chat.
All right.
I must have accidentally raised my hand. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Okay, I'm gonna bring up Linda, and we're gonna send you back, Ellie. But feel free to come and hang out on the BA chat after dark once we're done with Q&A here. Linda, did you have a question? I think you had a couple questions in the Q&A.
I'm trying.
Oh, nearly.
Nope, you were there. Linda, are you there?
So whilst we're waiting for Linda to appear, the question about still working on understanding your quote, data cloud is 80% planning, 20% execution. Data cloud, before you start building things, creating DSOs, DMOs, DLOs, data spaces, you've got to be very, very clear that that is exactly what you need. Because if they're the wrong things, then you can't edit them. You've got to go back and unpick them. So if a DMO is producing data via a DMO because you're using a bunch of harmonization, which has then come from a DLO, which is connected to a DSO in a data space, which is connected to an external source. And you go, we're not getting the data out we expected because of that DSO. I've got to unpick all the bits all the way back to that. Okay. Planning this is not only is it a waste of time and it's massively demotivating, you're also burning up credits. Because as you're testing, you've put all this data in, you've done stuff with it, it's burning up credits. So you've got to be very, very clear about about what you need to go and build before you start building it. And this is not the Salesforce, oh, we had to go, I'll see what happens. No, this is not amateur hour anymore. This is full-on data analysis, design. There is still some iteration. You're still trying to go, okay, did that really work? But you're iterating on very fine margins, not iterating on, oh, I built that and it didn't really work. And this is not just me saying it. Salesforce it's 80% planning. Do the planning. And to be honest, that's how we should have built Salesforce. That's how we ought to be building Salesforce. It's just we don't. And we're paying the price now.
Hey, welcome, Hildy.
Hi.
Hey. Hi, nice to meet you all and see you again, Vanessa. Yeah, is the issue like when you're planning and when you create a dev org or anything, when you use the UPN, sometimes it's hard because like when you know in the ecosystem, like to see a puzzle and everything, and you want that, like you were saying, that everything crash, So how can you use, because when you knew you try to draw with the UPN, but sometimes it's hard, you try to make a overhead, and how can you learn the data cloud, or this will go this way and plug this way, and how can you figure out the overall, because it's so complex at first, there's so many different layers. So when you create your Agentforce or everything, there's no hallucination. How can you take all that into account, when
Okay,
you
so
build something from scratch?
okay, so the first thing is that when you think about the business processes that you're mapping, you're not mapping the whole way the business works. You're going to pick a particular area. So we're going to go, let's just worry about how to start with. Let's worry about how we're going to support our employees, and they have big issues around, let's say, onboarding. So what are the things which we need to do for onboarding? So let's keep it fairly narrow, because over time we could then have several of those different diagrams and connect them at the top at a high level. So let's just, to start with, let's just keep it quite focused. That process, okay, then the question is that how the process works? Then what data does it need? And then the question is that data inside Salesforce or is it outside Salesforce? If it's outside Salesforce, we're going to need to understand, we're going to need to use Data Cloud to get that. So there's a sort of logical, and we built, we've written, I ought to put them in the chat. We've written a couple of books around how you implement Data Cloud from not the detail of clicks and what you click on, but actually how you think about it. And we've got this idea of a data flow diagram, thinking about how the data flows between the different systems. And that was a really good high level picture to go, okay, the feasibility of, if this is what we're trying to do, have we even got the data? Can I even make this work? And therefore, can I even afford it?
And I'm more like that. I'm more like a business data analyst, thinking of data, their plug. And I want to understand, because the UPN doesn't allow me, I want to see the data kind of like in 3D flowing and go in and out, so I can see where they go. So what would be the kind of diagram that you create first to see the data, and so you know what you create,
So that would be a data flow diagram.
Okay.
So that's one of the architects. So if you go to Elements.cloud to the ebooks, and then you go and download either the Data Cloud book 1 or 2, we've got some examples there of what a data flow diagram looks like and how we use that. Oh, there, someone's put a link in. So someone's very carefully. Oh, Charlie's put the link in there. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this will help so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, LD. Welcome.
There's a question there from Erica. What is your process for determining if you need Data Cloud before you build? So I think I kind of answered that. Agentforce doesn't necessarily require data from Data Cloud if all the data is inside Salesforce, but you do need Data Cloud because that's the way it tracks the sessions that people are using when the end user is going through. So it uses Data Cloud to log the activity that the agent's going through. So that's why you need Data Cloud switched on. You don't need Data Cloud unless you're accessing, say, if you've got knowledge, you want policies that are unstructured or PDFs, you're going to have to put those through a vector database into Data Cloud via a DMO and then expose them to a prompt and work through. And there was an example of that if you go to the Agentforce keynote from Dreamforce, I think it was the second demo, they did that. The one that was around Easy Cater, the catering company, because they had a spreadsheet of all the recipes, menus, I think, and they pulled that through a vector database into a prompt via Data Cloud into the agent that way.
Whoa. I just want to bring up Ian. I see that you're going to be speaking next week at Dreamin' in Data in St. Louis.
Yeah, in St. Louis, yeah.
What are you speaking on?
Well, I was talking about Data Cloud, but I might actually make it a bit more freeform, and we'll turn it into a bit of this as well. So yeah, cool. It was how to implement Data Cloud, but I think with the level of interest and my new T-shirt,
ooh, very nice.
There you go. I'll make it a bit more open. I mean, I'll do a little bit, but then I'll turn it into a bit more of a improv Q&A. What do people want to talk about?
Very cool.
There was a question from Erica. Planning to taking the passing the Data Cloud cert? You absolutely, the Data Cloud cert, I think you need to do because you need to understand how Data Cloud works. The Data Cloud cert will only teach you how to build Data Cloud, not how to do the planning. So the stuff that we've written about is the planning stuff. The Data Cloud cert tells you, like, click here, click there, click that. You need to understand why you're doing it, and that high level planning.
And I'll just throw out there, the Salesforce did a whole how to pass the Data Cloud cert for the partner community, and that's actually like those recordings and the slides are publicly facing. So I'm happy to pass along
Excellent.
that link if anybody wants to reach out, because
Just
that's
bear in mind,
that's what I used to pass.
bear in mind, getting the cert is the how do I build it, but rather than all the things I have to do up
Yeah.
until how I build it. Correct.
Well, how most certs seem to be.
Yeah, but I do think I know this has felt a bit complicated for people, but I think Agentforce is actually way more accessible than Data Cloud is. I mean, you could stand up a relatively simple agent and start proving the principles as an employee facing one, I think, relatively easily. Do the planning, but it's not nearly as complicated as probably pulling data in from third-party systems into Data Cloud. So again, first agent, keep the scope small, keep it fairly narrow.
Yeah, sounds awesome, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing what your recommended documentation would be. So if you've got templates on what those should look like, because that does seem like it'll be really essential that we don't miss something up in that one little bit of the diagram and have the impact ripple effect.
Yeah, so that's part of so we started writing this thing called an architecture pattern, a design patterns document, and in there we've got how would you document this, and really important is like what level is a topic versus an action versus an agent, because there's no guidance there at the moment. So, and again, working with the Salesforce architecture team, and rather than us just writing it, donating it to them, and then they can add their input into that. So we've actually got some good architecture standards out there about what you should be doing.
Cool. Ian, do you want to do another couple questions, or should we wrap it up with some final words? Up to you.
There's one more. How challenging is it to implement Data Cloud on an org that's highly complex with microprocesses and ever-changing business processes? On a scale of easy to why admins drink, you're on the why admins drink end of that, I would have thought. Again, don't think about all the advice that we've been giving from our experience of doing Data Cloud is, first of all, first Data Cloud implementation, keep it as narrow as possible, as simple as possible. It's quite hard just getting to a point where you've got, here's a single view of the customer, because in application 1, they're using their email address, and application 2, they're using a membership number, and that. So getting all that unified, it took a while to get the first one done, but the scope was quite narrow. Subsequent use cases happened really quickly. Plus, the use cases were coming from the end users going, well, if you can do that, could we do this? And we went, yeah, that's not that difficult. So I think trying to implement Data Cloud across a whole org for all this stuff, really hard. Pick a narrow use case, prove it works, prove there's a good business case. And again, the books and a couple of the videos we've done talk you through that. But pick a narrow one where, and by the way, don't pick the mission critical process that's highly politically charged that everyone, I mean, this is sort of classic consultant stuff. Like, pick something which you can get on within a corner and make it work, and then learn from that to build out from there in terms of what are the politics. Just one little point here. If you're doing Data Cloud, you now want data from the marketing system, in our world, HubSpot. We wanted it from our training team, which was Docebo. We wanted it from our Elements usage data, which is in Gainsight, which we put through S3. And then obviously Salesforce is in the middle. We're talking to the marketing team and going, well, actually, that data, can you change the way the data comes out? They're like, no, we're really busy. We're building other stuff. It's like, oh, hang on. So you've got the politics of trying to get different groups and different divisions to change the priorities of what they're able to build for you. So again, the sponsor isn't the Salesforce person. The sponsor is probably the CIO who looks over all the systems. It says, for the greater good of the company, change your priority. You've got to do this in a different way. This is just way more complicated. So again, that's why keeping it as the scope as narrow as possible is really important. Otherwise, you'll just die because of all the politics, and you'll not get the data you want, and therefore you will be associated with a failed project, which is never good for anyone's career.
Cool. So a couple questions. When we build out agents with topics, are diagrams generated on the back end, or do we need to create them?
Sorry, repeat that again. Sorry.
When we build agents with topics, are diagrams generated on the back end, or do we need to create them?
Which diagrams? The ones I drew?
I think it's the one you drew. Yeah, I think that's
okay.
the answer to the question.
Yeah, so the process ones are the ones you do at the front end. The diagram that looked like a massive wiring diagram, that essentially is a dependency tree which Elements will build for you because it knows about all the metadata and all the connection points.
Okay. And then why don't we close it up with this one? What is your recommendation for timing and status of using Agentforce if an org is in need of data cleanup, which is pretty much all of them? Does it need a certain level, quote unquote, of clean? Thanks, Jana.
That's a great question. We see that a lot. I think people go, we can't possibly do AI because the data is not good enough. The answer is it's never going to be good enough. So the same ways you wouldn't go, we're not going to hire anybody until all our HR processes are perfect. You never hire anybody on that basis. So I think part of it is get started, understand the data that you need, use that to drive any data quality assessment. Because again, back to the example we had for the Trailhead badge, it was only 4 objects. It wasn't the entire org. When the lead object may be a disaster, that doesn't matter because I'm worried about contact, experience, and booking. So again, keep the scope narrow, which means that you can get started and then you can do an assessment of the data quality, which will then feed into the business case. Is it worth doing this agent? We haven't really talked very much about that, but actually between use case and then use case to analysis and analysis to design, there's a checkpoint that says, based on what we're trying to do and the cost of what it's going to take, is it still worth doing? So if you're taking a measured approach like that, you can go into it and go, okay, this is what we thought we were going to do. This is the quality of the data. This is how much work we've got to do. Is it still worth doing? And you can actually, rather than just saying, well, we've got started, we're going to finish.
So, so I'm understanding it because I have to BA and validate that I understood that properly. So what you're saying is that it's not so much that your entire org needs to be a certain level of clean. It's a matter of slicing it into what is the process that you're trying to have an agent for, and what is the quality of that data, and then doing the analysis beforehand on if it's still based on the quality of the data and the work that it'll take to create the agent and all the back end processes, as well as the documentation, the change management, all the things that we should be considering at the beginning. Is it still worth moving forward? Did I get that right?
Absolutely. And also, if you've cleaned the data up, let's put some data governance around that data.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very conscious that we've taken quite a lot of people's time. I'm happy to keep going forever. But the point is, let's summarize with, I know Data Cloud is a very data-centric project. Agentforce is a very process-centric object. If you ever wanted a reason to have a role as a BA, Salesforce has made it very obvious that Agentforce is the future, which means we've all got a very healthy future in front of us.
Excellent. Love the optimism, and thank you so much, Ian, for being here with us. And thanks everybody for coming. We're going to stop the recording, and if folks are interested in joining us for badass business analysis chat after dark, then we'll turn off the recording and we'll chat from there. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next month.